Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadows Mall. Yes, well, we figured out we had a little scheduling snafu, and we actually scheduled this review for today. So guess what? We're reviewing this, and this is Cinderella 2015. Joining me is Chriz the Mole from the Mole Hole,
And hello.
and James Phoenix from Lair of the Phoenix.
Thank you, Crypt Keeper.
Yes, I'm Marcus Shadow.
I also didn't realize we told the audience it was going to be on a different day.
Well, I was giving an explanation as to why we're doing a review, because if you remember at the end of the last one, I said stay tuned for Monday's review of Star Trek. But, so just trying to keep continuity here. But, yes, I'm Marcus Shadow. I still sound like shit. Not much has changed since last night. Still don't much have my voice.
Not much has changed since ever.
No. But we're going to start with the little Frozen bonus thing that I didn't realize was there, so I didn't actually rent the version with the bonus, so I didn't actually see it. So I will let Mr. Phoenix take it away for the bonus feature.
Thank you. Yes, the bonus feature on this film is the same bonus feature that was shown in theaters when the film was aired. Yes, and Frozen Fever, a little mini sequel to the hit Disney film Frozen. The basic premise is that it is Anna's birthday, and Elsa has planned an entire day of birthday fun, but she has unfortunately developed a bit of a cold, Elsa has. And so she attempts to ignore this cold while leading Anna throughout Arendelle and partaking in a wide variety of birthday-related fun, seeing characters from the other movie, while basically getting sicker and sicker, and Anna tries to care for her instead of, making a birthday about her. And there's also one big song called Happy, Happy Birthday to You.
Yep. And I will say the music in this, the song, I think wasn't there more than one song, or was it just one continuous song?
I think it was one continuous song.
Okay, it sounded different in parts, but I will say better music than the entirety of the actual Frozen film. I'll give that bonus an actual prop. That's not an insult. I liked the music in this one.
That's an insult to the music in the actual movie.
Yeah, I didn't like the music in the actual one. I did think it was cool how they did include part of it, where Anna's talking to Elsa, and Elsa even mentions, "But the cold never bothered me anyway." I mean, it continues with the regular song. I'm like, that's funny.
Yeah, she was a cold never bothered me anyway. That was kind of funny. And then she goes into the birthday song. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, I like that, and I was like, that's kind of cool and clever, and a good throwback and a good use of music.
Yes.
And it was animated well. I don't know, was it all their voices?
As far as I know, yes, the entire voice cast was brought back.
Fair enough. I might just be more used to the Once Upon a Time one, because I was like, Elsa sounds weird. But I might just be used to the Once Upon a Time Elsa now.
Well, no, Elsa she was supposed to sound weird because she had a head cold.
I mean, I was used to her with the bit of an accent to her, but I'm thinking that was the Once Upon a Time one, where she had a bit of an accent.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, this also only sounded weird because she had a head cold that steadily got worse, so her voice steadily got, different as it went on.
Yeah, which they included this in the cinema for this to try and get more people in. It's on the DVD to try and get more people to buy the DVD, and honestly, I reckon that's a good thing. It's a good little Trojan horse, whatever you want to call it, because let's face it, some people who would be like, I don't know if I want to see a live-action Cinderella. Oh, it's got a sequel to Frozen attached. We have to go see it, and that can work, and it did work. It made it massive. It made the film. It made the film profitable.
It did.
It's also a good idea to use essentially the Disney princess, if you will, even though she's a queen, but still, of using the Disney princess of today's world of Frozen to get kids to go and watch a film about one of the original Disney princesses of Cinderella. I say one of because I think Snow White came first.
Yeah, Snow White was the original, and then Cinderella was number 2.
Yeah, as I said, one of the originals.
At least I think Cinderella was 2. Sleeping Beauty might have been before that. I can't remember, but something like that.
Yeah, she's still one of the originals.
It's actually kind of funny that people criticize the whole princess thing with Elsa because technically she's a queen. Watching this Cinderella movie actually reminded me of something because I hadn't seen the cartoon in forever, And it made me realize, wait a minute, Cinderella was never a princess. She was only ever a queen.
No, she marries a prince.
She marries the king. He's the king when she marries her.
In this one, in the original story, she marries Prince Charming. His name is Prince Charming.
Yeah, in the original version, the prince's father is still alive at the end of the movie, so he is not yet the king. Therefore, she is only a princess and not yet the queen.
Fair enough.
She definitely counts as a princess, but it's a case of, with the Elsa thing, I have no problem with her being counted as a Disney princess or whatever. It's just weird because it seems like a step back, as she actually is a Disney queen.
But she was a princess too, because she was the princess before she was the queen. So it still kind of works.
Yeah, for like 5 minutes of the film. when she had parents and it didn't work out.
Yeah, but she didn't. I haven't seen the movie, but she didn't officially become the queen until like the end of the movie when she went through with the whole coronation and the people accepted her.
She officially had the coronation and stuff like that, but I believe wasn't the whole thing she was actually she was basically the queen, and it was a massive step forward for Disney films in general and for young women everywhere, that the character wanted to be a queen and not just have the title of princess because it sounds cooler. So I still have to give her props and say she is the Disney queen.
She is. Absolutely.
But yeah, I gave props to I think the little bonus, as much as I didn't like the actual film Frozen, the bonus was really watchable. I liked that.
Indeed. And yes, the premise is that she became a queen early on at the coronation. She was intended to become the queen. She was just afraid of becoming the queen because her powers going out of control. And from that moment, she was officially the queen. It was just a matter of, she ran away, which defaulted the queenship to the rulership to Anna, which Hans tried to take by pretending to fake marry her and then letting her die from frozen heart and then trying to kill Elsa so he'd be in charge. But Elsa was the queen after the coronation that went awry before she froze the kingdom.
Oh, fair enough. Okay. Clarification.
Like you do.
Yeah, like you do.
Like you do, because when their parents died, Anna was officially the next in line. And she just had to reach appropriate age, which in this case is 21 in that kingdom, in order to be officially coronated.
Yeah, it's like that. It makes sense. I mean, I think all of us out there have at some point become a queen, got these powers, froze an entire kingdom, created life that we never address again. Of the fact we can create life, sing about it, mock the crowd people for being frozen themselves, and then go back as if nothing's happened.
Hi, Simon.
I think that's happened to all of us.
Like I said, hi, Simon.
Yes, he would be included in all of us.
Yes. Yeah, Jim, what did you think of the bonus thing? You didn't really give your opinion on it.
I kind of did, but okay.
He did. He said that he agreed with me. He said it was enjoyable. He liked it.
Yeah, I liked the little frost. I enjoyed the original movie too, to be honest. I liked this little bit. It wasn't quite what I expected it to be, but I thought it was funny, entertaining. That they had a lot of good little references here and there, and they got a lot of things in that remind you of the original movie in a very short, 5 to 8 minute time frame. I thought that was good.
Also, Baby Snowman, so much funnier than Olaf.
Nah.
Fair enough. So, Cinderella 2015 live action, produced by Disney. This movie surprised me, actually. Right off the bat, it says it's basically an adaptation of both the book and their animated feature, Cinderella. I think it was based more off the book than the animated feature, but I'm not certain because I haven't actually read the story, the book, and I haven't seen the movie in a long time. But the one thing that really struck me from the get-go is how dark it got. It got really dark really fast, and I was like, whoa. And that really took me aback, especially because it's a Disney movie. And I'm like, I did not expect Disney to go this dark.
See, ironically, I was the opposite of that. I felt it was more the animated one because I felt it didn't go dark enough.
Really?
I'm not saying it should be overly dark, but like, for example, I'm sure people out there have seen the Drew Barrymore film Ever After. That one felt closer to the original Cinderella story with some of the darkness and stuff because it went dark. It didn't go It's not like going dark, like Dark Knight dark, before anyone thinks that crap. It's
No.
just more. It's just more of a satisfying story. This one didn't seem to go as dark as I thought. It felt like it was based more heavily on the cartoon. And it makes sense because she even had like the friends of the mice. She had the same color dress as the cartoon. She has the fairy godmother. They go through loads of stuff that the cartoon does. So it's like it felt more like an adaptation of the cartoon, which I'm okay with.
Fair enough. It didn't. To me, it didn't feel as much like a cartoon. Like it had the nods to, like it had, like you said, the same color dress. Which, like I said, I didn't know a lot of the details of the book, so I didn't, or the story, so I didn't know if how much they had changed for the cartoon. I mean, obviously, I would assume like with the fairy godmother, they probably didn't have like the bibbidi bobbidi boo stuff in the original story and stuff like that. So and she didn't really ever really use that. She like did it quickly, but she only used it a couple of times. She's not like she made a big thing about it, and like I don't know, they went like more realistic with the animals and stuff, which took me back. I was like, wow, they actually went and made them look like real mice. That's interesting. But in terms of the darkness, I was talking more about like the mood. Like it got really depressing. I'm like, wow, this is dark. And then after the first about third or so of the movie, then it lightened up and it started to become a little more comedic, which worked. It became more like the cartoon, like you said, more Disney, in my opinion. And I felt the comedy actually really worked well in this movie because it wasn't hitting you over the head with the comedy. It was actually kind of funny, and it was. I like that some of the animals, the kind of anthropomorphic animals, if you will, were self-aware. They knew what they were. Like the goose that gets turned into the coachman. He's like, I don't know how to drive. I'm a goose. No, I thought that was a nice touch. I thought that was clever and that was funny. Like the lizard trying to comfort uh, uh, Cinderella, who's all of a sudden gets cold feet at the palace, and he's like, "Look, I'm a lizard that was turned into a dude. Just enjoy it while it lasts, okay?" I'm like, that's kind of clever. It's like that self-aware. I'm like, I like that. That was funny. But yeah, the darkness in the early ons, and it took me aback, and also the fact that they decided to show Cinderella from the small girl growing up and losing both her parents and stuff. I was like, okay, I would not have expected them to do that, and that went a little bit dark. Now on the flip side, something I have to criticize the movie for to say, it kind of ruined everything else that it had going for it, and that it was that the whole ambiance of the movie, and that was the villains, the stepmother, the stepsisters. Don't get me wrong, the two stepsisters looked like they had loads of fun with the roles. They were really into it. They were just having fun with it. And the stepmother and the stepsisters were very much in the vein of the cartoon, but I felt that it did this movie a disservice because they were so over the top. The stepsisters maybe more than the stepmother. Like the stepsisters, you looked at them, and if you've ever seen the Cinderella cartoon, you're like, okay, yeah, they're the evil stepsisters. I was just like, I felt they were a little too over the top for the tone of this movie. But with the evil stepmother, played by wonderfully by Kate Blanchett, I might add, she makes a delightful villain or villainess. But the one problem I had with the stepmother, I thought she did a good job. She kind of played her half subtly, a little bit, but I did not like the unveiling or the revealing of the stepmother, because from the word go, as soon as she steps out of that carriage, you're like, villain. Because she literally steps out dressed in all black with her back to the camera, so it's the obvious villain angle, walks into the house, stops, and does the slow motion villain reveal. I'm like, wow, you're making no bones about it.
Marcus?
Hmm?
She would be dressed in all black.
Why?
They mentioned she was mourning her other husband. That's why they mentioned, but she got over mourning faster, and she just grins as she's inside the house. So she was in a mourning process. And then when someone's died, you're supposed to wear black. It's tradition.
Which is fine, but just that combined with everything else, you're just like, wow, you shot her as a villain.
Well,
Like, this
and
was literally a villain
also,
montage. I'm like, oh.
yeah, and also in the original, I will point out there was never a fairy godmother.
Okay, fair enough.
I was saying that before, but you kept cutting me off with the bibbidi bobbidi boo and went into that. But yeah, there was no fairy godmother in the original. It was like basically like a, I don't know what you'd call it, like a tree or a bush or something that was on a mother's grave.
Well, like a magical bush or something.
Pretty much.
Fair enough.
And basically, they say when you plant the tree, you got whatever you wish, and she plants it, and she gets a dress and all that stuff.
Ah, fair enough.
But yeah, I liked the tone of this. Like I said, I thought the tone was the cartoon, just a bit more serious, because obviously it's a live-action film. You can't make it like the cartoon. I didn't feel it was too dark. I felt it kept the heart and the tone of the cartoon. It was brightly lit for most of it and looked beautiful. They did clever stuff with playing with the mouse and stuff. And I was like, it's a good thing. I didn't like, which we'll go into more later on, but probably when we go to discuss near the end. But I didn't like the ending. But
yeah,
I liked the actress playing Cinderella. I thought she did a great job. I loved the idea of seeing how, like she mentions that being called Cinderella really did actually affect her. That was cool. I like the fact the mother has motivations. That's good.
You mean the stepmother?
Yeah, the stepmother. She has some motivations, which I like.
See, that was one thing I didn't like. Was the fact, to me, it felt like she may have had motivations, but it was never adequately explained. Like, even when Cinderella outright asks her, why have you done all this? She still avoids it. She never actually outright answers the question.
She outright answers. Cinderella asks her, why would you do this? And she goes, because look at you. Every time I see you and you're his daughter, you're his precious daughter, and I look at you, you're so young and beautiful, and and then she walks off in shame when she's just and Cinderella's face, it tells the story that the mother's jealous of Cinderella's beauty and her youth. She outright says it.
I must not have got that from that then, because when I saw it, I was like, you kind of didn't answer the question.
What did you get from her saying, you're so young and beautiful, and and then turns her head away and walks away? Cinderella looks shocked.
See, I must not have heard the "you're so young and beautiful" thing. I must have heard something else. I don't know, because what I remember from it, what I heard from it, was along. See, I was really confused, and I didn't really know, because based on what she said, it almost sounded like she was saying that she was jealous of Cinderella because her father would never truly love her. Like, her father would always talk about his ex-wife, Cinderella's mother, and Cinderella herself, and so she knew she could never like have her father and then never have like their wealth and stuff. And then when her father passed away, like, she was like, all I have left now is this man's daughter, who represents everything that kept him and all this stuff away from me. If I keep her locked up or whatever, then she can't really take control of this stuff, the house and whatnot, and I get to keep that for my daughters. But now I'm like destitute, blah blah blah. Like I said, I was confusing. I got really confused, and I was like, I never got I never got a really simple explanation as to why are you doing all this.
Like I said, part of it was the little bit of how her father saw her, but she, like I said, with her outright saying about the young and beautiful bit and all that, it's basically, it just stems from jealousy, because the mother never really got what she wanted out of life, and therefore she's going to take out on Cinderella. And it's like, okay, that's a motivation. It's not necessarily the most three-dimensional motivation out there, but it's more motivational than we've seen in the cartoon. But I don't know, what did Jim think?
I agree with Bowl.
He agrees with Bowl.
Well, no, because I remember her saying, like, because I remember the first thing she says when she's asked, why are you doing this, she starts talking about, like, her late husband. She was like, it was a woman who married for love and then lost, and then, her greatest love passed away, and then start talking about like Cinderella's father and stuff. Like I never heard her actually talk about Cinderella herself. She was like, and like I said, maybe I missed that part, but I heard all the, you know, I married for love, and then my husband passed away, and I was left, depressed and destitute, blah blah blah, and then I met your father. But when I came in, I never really felt loved by, and at that point she was it. It was like after she had lost the man she loved, she started doing things for other reasons, but it was never explained why after losing the man she loved, she lost the capacity to love. And I always got the sense, based on her saying, then I came in here, I married for the sake of my daughters instead of the sake of myself. But, the sense that she was like never really happy, like you said, and that Cinderella represented that lack of happiness because, as long as Cinderella's father had Cinderella there, he would never truly be hers because Cinderella would always remind him of the wife, and he loves his daughter and stuff like that.
It's like I said, that's fine, but I was going by the actual words of the film.
Those were the actual words of the film.
The actual words of the film when Cinderella asks her again, and she goes, it's because you're so young, you're so beautiful, I'm just, and then walks away. And there's that moment where she looks like, oh, and Cinderella just gets it.
Okay, well, let's miss that part because I remember going from that long explanation of that her backstory of the
she went through all that
into that sputter. That's all I remember is that from that it went straight into the then I'm and then walks off. I'm like, you didn't really explain anything. It's like we kind of knew your backstory. It's like, okay, well, we didn't know you married for love, and that's fair enough, and that makes sense.
Yeah, you clearly tuned out 5 minutes of the scene.
Thank you. That's what I said. I was going by what the scene actually said. And I know you keep backtracking around where you didn't hear it, and then therefore you took something else from it. But that's what the film says. It was pretty easy.
Yeah, and I also got the distinct feeling that she never loved her first husband either.
No.
She was married for the sake of it's the proper thing to do is to be married in an advantageous marriage, and she had her 2 daughters that.
She married. She marries for power, basically, and money and stuff, because, like they said, when she's mourning at the very beginning, she walks in and just grins.
She does, and they framed her as a villain, but the fact of the matter is, the story's been around for 100 years. We all know she's the villain. What's the point of beating around the bush?
Yeah.
And the fact is, I get the feeling that she does legitimately love her 2 daughters to some extent or another in her own twisted way, but and she says outright basically she's jealous of Cinderella, and the fact that she's young, beautiful, the fact that, her father loved her in a way that she herself, the stepmother herself, was never loved by either of her husbands or her daughters, her own daughters for that matter, and she was jealous of everything that Cinderella had in the world that she didn't have. So it's more motivation than the stepmother had in the original film. Although I will say, given that motivation is stronger, I would expect more of a reaction because I know that I think compared to the animated one, in the scene where she tears up Cinderella's dress later on, saying you can't go to the ball, that was a lot more dramatic in the cartoon, if I recall correctly, than it was in this film.
I thought it was more dramatic in this. In the cartoon, it was more black and white, like evil. But in this one, when she does it and Cinderella even begins to cry, and the mother's doing it more subtly of tearing her down with, like, what do you call it, like with the lines and what she's saying and stuff. And then as she does it, Cinderella even says to her, "How can you be so cruel?" And she's got the tears, and because it's more, I don't know, live action, it felt more real. Whereas the other one, especially with how the stepmother's drawn, she's drawn like an obvious fucking villain.
That too.
Yeah, but that's my point though, is that the stepmother in this one was only framed, but just the look was an obvious villain, and to me, being that overt and obvious that way, it was a stark contrast to the subtlety of the rest of the film, because I felt the rest of the film was very well done. It had a really good tone, between the dark and the light tones and everything. It's just, to me, the stepmother and the stepsisters never fit because they were so overt.
See, they were played subtly, but their looks, same thing with Cinderella, same thing with the princess and stuff, all the looks of it were from the cartoon. Ironically, the mother looks less like a villain in this than the cartoon, because in the cartoon, she's like this grey-haired witch-looking thing.
True.
A voice by the same actress who voices Maleficent, I might add.
Angelina Jolie?
not that Maleficent.
If only I knew who voiced her in the toy box mode of Disney Infinity. Damn you, logic.
Probably Susan Blakesley. She voices her in Kingdom Hearts and all the other animated appearances recently.
But
yeah, maybe that was just a personal preference thing. I just felt they were too over it. I was like, I understand you're trying to go for the cartoon, but it's like you could have done them a little more subtle. Like the stepmother was okay. I felt she was a little too over it too, but she was passable, serviceable in that overtness. I just felt that the stepsisters were way too overt and just did not fit. They really took me out of it.
that's okay, that's fair enough. To me, it made sense because, like I said, it was based on the cartoon, and it felt like it was just the cartoon, and then some parts of it were more serious.
Mm-hmm.
Which that works.
Yeah, that's kind of how it felt. They try to draw certain more feeling from certain scenes and try to expand in certain areas, more on Cinderella's early life when she was happy. A little bit more on, the stepmother and stepsister's family situation beforehand and what their deal was. They talked about that more, and about, building it up to the moment where she's with the stepmother, building her up to being treated like crap slowly rather than all at once. They did make a lot of the rest of it subtle. It was just a matter of the general appearances were taken kind of directly from the cartoon.
Yeah, which also makes a little bit of sense, because one of the reasons for this is now kids watching this will know who Cinderella is without having to watch the cartoon one, and when they go to, say, Disneyland, available in multiple countries, they go to like a Disney World or a Disneyland, and they see someone dressed as Cinderella or dressed as the stepmother or something, they're going to pretty much get who they are and be like, oh, I remember them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cross-branding, so they kind of had to do that. It's like, let's face it, it's like Batman. Because I used The Dark Knight before, and I'll mention it again. Like, The Dark Knight was dark, serious, and very subtle with stuff. He's still a dude dressed as a giant bat. There's nothing subtle about that.
Yeah.
Which, it doesn't hurt the film. That's his iconic look. And for Disney, the iconic look of Cinderella, the stepmother, and the sisters are from the cartoon.
True. That's true. I gave you that. I will say all the actors and actresses did a really great job. This was cast well, and to the point that very interesting casting choice, choices. As I mentioned beforehand, the evil stepmother was played by Cate Blanchett, which not a huge fan of her villain roles that I've seen, but this one she did really well. However, the other interesting counterpoint to that, or counter casting to that, is the fairy godmother, Helena Bonham Carter, which, what the fuck? But if you think about it, really makes sense because they were going, they were trying to make it a little bit more like the cartoon, which is more, the old granny, but the more bumbling, the more, kind of absent-minded type, more the comedic. And Helena Bonham Carter, if anything, does great physical comedy and just comedy in general. And she was perfect for this role.
Yeah, I liked her in the role. The weirdest one for me was, I don't think it was, I don't think it was, it might have been the king's dad or whatever. It was one of them, anyway, from the royal side of things. I'm looking at him like, the guy with like the blonde hair and the beard, and like, I know you from somewhere. Where do I know you? You're Magneto's boyfriend from Vicious.
Nah.
And I'm like, wait, you're overly serious, and no, where's the camp bitchy version from Vicious? I like him.
I think he did a good job.
Curse you and your ability to act.
Yeah, but you would think if they were casting Helena Bonham Carter in a movie like this, she would be the evil stepmother. But in a brilliant turn, they made her the good guy, the fairy godmother, and made Cate Blanchett the stepmother, and it worked.
I'd say Helen Bonham Carter would be if you're going with the cliche casting choices, but to be fair, she's also done work as the hero side of stuff.
True, but most of this time you don't see her in that bubbly, like the fairy godmother type role. Is all I'm saying is when most people think Helena Bonham Carter, they think usually with the darker type roles, not necessarily villain, but darker type roles, and the evil stepmother certainly fits the type of roles that you normally think of when you think Helena Bonham Carter.
Possibly, Like that, I think of a lot of her roles. Like let's not forget she was also like the hero in the Tim Burton's what do you call it? Oh, what do you call it? Planet of the Apes, which while that isn't the best
That's
Planet
true.
of the Apes out there, I know that she was a hero in that.
That's true. Touche. But one other thing I wanted to mention with the beginning of this movie that just made me go, what the fuck are you doing? The first third, roughly, of this movie, way too much narration. It's like the first third of this movie was like an overly long prologue, and I'm sitting here watching this, listening to the narration. I'm like, you don't need the narration. You're literally showing us what you're talking about, and it would be far more powerful and far more dramatic if you would just cut the narration, which, mind you, the narration was beautifully done by Helena Bonham Carter. But it would have, in my opinion, been much better if you'd have cut a lot of the narration and just let the scenes play and maybe extend the scene by like a minute or something just to actually show the emotion you want to show. Because like I remember like a scene where she's like, Cinderella's up in her room and her godmother's like, Cinderella's had to, curl up by the fire a lot because it got so cold. And you see Cinderella curl up by the fire. I'm like, you don't have to narrate that. Just have her curl up by the fire and shiver and act like it's cold. Done.
Yeah,
you get the message.
Yeah, but you're missing the point, Marcus.
Thank you.
The point wasn't to narrate it because we don't know what's going on. It was to make it feel like someone's reading you a fairy tale story. That's like someone's reading you a story. It's like makes it part fairy tale. It captures that essence that the cartoon and the book and all elements of Cinderella have had, and that is the element of being a fairy tale story, without having to do the cliched thing of show you a book with pages turning throughout the whole thing.
I didn't like that because to me it felt like the movie didn't actually start until a third of the way through when the narration stopped. I'm not saying don't have any narration. You have a prologue, have some narration, that's fine, but don't have half to like 2/3 of the first third of your movie narrated when you're showing me exactly what you're narrating. It's like do one or the other. Don't do both. And in this case, I think it would have worked a lot better if they went with the old adage, show, don't tell.
Except I know that would have been awkward as all hell, because then you're just going to have a bunch of scenes of things happening with very little dialogue and with no context, and you're just going to be fucking confused.
Yeah, and show, don't tell doesn't refer to narration like that, because like I said, that's the structure of fairy tales. Show, don't tell is like, for example, when they constantly tell you how awesome a character is, but then you never see them be awesome. That's show, don't tell, because you want to see them be awesome. This was like a narration, so it felt like a fairy tale story, and it worked. It was a cool framing device of that, while keeping the mood of the film the same, without having the glaring stuff of, like I said, like the cliched pages turning to show you that. Also, the joke comment of have one or the other, without the narration, you're just watching a random montage. And without what's going on the screen, it's a podcast.
Yep. And the fact is, they needed the narration there because that was covering the portion of the story that most people don't know. Yeah, if you when you cut in the main part, yeah, you don't need the narration because everybody knows Cinderella's story. You generally know what to expect within reason. But all that early stuff was new stuff that Disney added to the backstory to show more of what Cinderella was like as a girl, her growing up with her parents, her mother dying, then her father dying, showing all that backstory. And as a result, they narrated that so people wouldn't felt like they were just thrown into an unknown area and just left to, wallow in a part of the story they had never seen. By having Helena Bonham Carter narrate it and guide everyone through, people could follow along and understand what they were seeing and what was going on and how that related to the Cinderella story they already knew.
Which is fine. And like I said, the beginning of it, you want to narrate parts of it, that's fine. And yes, I agree, especially with the stuff that's new. You need to have some narration to establish backstory. That's the purpose of a narrated prologue, is to establish backstory. My point was, to me, it felt like it went too long. Like, after, I would say, and this might be even pushing it, but at the point that the stepmother and the stepsisters join the family, the narration should have stopped. Just show us what it was like for Cinderella growing up with this evil stepmother. We will get it. You don't have to narrate that. But they narrated it and narrated it to death up until the point that they cut to, adult Cinderella. That's when the narration, for the most part, stopped. And to me, that's when the movie truly began. And I'm like, that's way too long. It should have began with the stepmother. Let us live with the stepmother and with Cinderella. Let us live with her through Cinderella's eyes. That would have been far more interesting to me and far more dramatic, because we would have felt it instead of you telling us this is how you should feel because this is what Cinderella's going through. It's like, no, let us live with that. Let us feel that, because then when you go in later with the stepmother's motivations, with the stepmother and the stepsisters really getting evil and nasty, and with what the actual story of Cinderella is, we will feel that. I never really felt that until really later on in the movie, when I actually had a chance to, again, live through Cinderella's eyes with the stepmother and the stepsisters until I could feel what Cinderella felt.
But if they let you live through Cinderella's eyes for every little thing, the movie would be 6 hours long.
And also, when they let you live through their lives, you missed her motivation.
Yeah, well. But I'm not saying live through every little thing, Jim. I'm saying kind of did what they did in the movie with, showing bits and pieces of it. But what I'm saying is, instead of narrating it, actually flesh out some of the scenes a little bit. I'm not saying go overboard. I'm not saying make the movie another hour long. I'm saying, add another minute or two to each scene just to flesh it out a little bit so we can actually feel it. Add maybe a line of dialogue or something. But let us live with it instead of just saying, this is who she is, this is what they've done, this is how you should feel. I'm like, I didn't like that.
Not necessarily how you should feel, they're just telling you the story because it's a story. That's how it works. And the fact of the matter is, in this case, because they were jumping around to different scenes, audiences get very easily lost if you do that without narration to guide them along.
Yeah, it was like I said, it was a framing structure because it's meant to be a fairy tale book. Complaining that a fairy tale story has narration explain like this would be like complaining if you watched Star Trek and you saw space.
Not really, because you also have to remember what works in a book may not necessarily work for a movie or
There
any
is
other
no narration
medium.
in a book because you're reading it yourself. This is a different medium, and when they do it in a different medium, like I mentioned, there's two ways of doing that in a first film. There is the narration portion, so it's like someone's reading you a story, or there's the opening and closing of a book with pages turning, which since Shrek, loads of stuff have done that. It's become way too cliched at this point. So until that dies down, narration's the best choice.
Yeah, or not doing it at all and just, I don't know, writing it and directing it properly.
This was written and directed properly. That's literally a framing device.
Well, I didn't feel it worked. I felt it went on way too long. Like I said, I'm not saying narration's a bad thing. I'm not saying the prologue's a bad thing. It's needed, especially if you're trying to tell, backstory. You're trying to set things up. But like I said, when I'm sitting here watching this and feeling like the first third of the movie wasn't the actual movie, it was all prologue and setup, I'm like, I don't like that.
Fair enough. And like I said, to me, it was perfect because it captured the essence of reading a story. And I felt that was perfect. I thought the opening worked very well. It was solid and it was beautifully directed and written, and that's how it should have been. But that was just me. I don't know which side. What do you think, Jim?
Listen, I agree. I thought it was well done, and I like how they structured it with the narration to kind of lead you through to help wean you into the story, get past the parts that, needed to be covered, but that didn't need that much detail, so you can get to the meat of the story, which is the part that everyone knows. So the audience didn't get lost or didn't get bored for the early portion of the film, and that way they could get right into the story they know and get down to brass tacks, as it were. So I thought they did a good job with that whole thing.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that was my whole point, is that I got kind of bored when I realized, wait a minute, this is just an extended prologue. What the fuck? I want the actual movie.
Well, fair
They
enough.
clearly
Like
did not understand the definition of actual movie.
yeah, fair enough. Because like I said, me and James, that's 2/3 of this conversation, said we didn't get bored and we thought that was the actual movie and was done beautifully.
However, I also like the fact that they didn't make it a musical, which surprised the fuck out of me. There was music in it, she sang once or twice, but it was never really an overt song, and it was not shot or written or directed like a musical. And I was like, well, it's Disney, and that surprises me, but it worked, and it was great. It was refreshing to see Disney do not a musical.
Yeah, it makes sense. They tend to do that with their live action stuff.
Yeah, but
Indeed.
this is supposed to be an adaptation of a musical movie that they've done, so I fully expected it to be a musical. And it was refreshing and surprising that they didn't. I was like, oh, okay, cool, and it worked.
Yeah, I wasn't arguing with you. I was saying I liked it. I just kind of expected it because that's how they did it with like Maleficent and all the other live action ones that they tend to do. I'm like, it works.
Fair enough. I haven't seen Maleficent or anything, so. Also, when they were going around with the glass slipper, they had an African American girl that they were doing. Was that supposed to be like Anastasia or something?
No,
Because she looked a lot like her. I was like, wow, is that supposed to be like a.
she's not black. Anastasia's clearly Italian American and hosts her own show. What the wrong with you?
Very funny.
Are you getting it confused with QJ?
Very funny.
But no, I don't think it was meant to be Anastasia. I just think they were trying to show that they went to all races and all types and stuff like that. I thought they tried fat people, thin people, white people,
Right.
black people.
Right, which is what I would have thought too. I don't know. It's just maybe just the look of that actress when I saw her. That's it. I immediately flashed. I was like, wow, she looks a lot like her. Is that kind of what the nod or the reference they were going for?
Fair enough.
I do have to say one thing that threw me off with the glass slipper, because I remember this happening in the cartoon and it did not happen in the movie from what I can remember in this movie. The stepmother never tried the shoe on. Which I was like, what?
Well, yeah, because they established in the shoe fitting montage that they were only trying it on women of appropriate age.
Ah.
And if you look into the shoe montage, they had scenes like one scene where they went into this big like bar full of women, and there was this little old lady at the table, and she stuck her foot out all, hey, try it on me, and the guys were like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, but it's not like the stepmother's that old.
Yes, but he saw Cinderella. She was very obviously like 18 to 20. The stepmother is obviously like 35 to 40.
I believe they did try it on the stepmother.
Oh, did they? It looked like they only tried it on the daughters.
They were trying it on the daughters because that's more comical, because with the stepmother it's just going to be a case of it doesn't fit. The stepmother's character wasn't going to react in a hilarious way like the ones they showed reacting in hilarious ways. But when the guy left her house, he did mention, we've tried it on everyone in the house, and then they heard the singing. So I'm thinking maybe they just tried it on her off screen because, let's face it, what reaction would she have gotten that would be different to all the hilarious ones of like, oh, try it on me, it's going to fit, and stuff like that. It's like, she's not going to be that funny doing it, and yeah.
True.
However, if it was directed by Tarantino, she would have an hour-long scene in which she tried it on.
Ah. Probably.
Boom. Tarantino foot fetish joke. Boom.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of the singing, I love what they did with that scene because it made sense. Because if I recall in the cartoon, don't the mice actually open the door so Cinderella can come downstairs?
Yep.
But in the movie, they were like, well, realistically, they wouldn't be able to open the door. However, if we have Cinderella singing, it would be perfectly viable that they'd have enough weight to pull down the latch of the window. I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And that's clever. I like that.
I like that. And I will say, if anyone listening, I will say I did like what they did with the title character of Cinderella.
Mm-hmm.
She's sort of a hybrid between the cartoon and the book one for one reason. I get the sense, based on the fact like her mother told her to always show kindness and stuff like that she is a victim, but she's not weak.
Yes.
The normal cartoon, she's very weak. This one, she's not weak. She's actually showing great strength by always choosing to turn the other cheek and always choosing to be nice. And that's kind of good. I kind of like that.
I agree. But one thing I wanted is they did kind of really drive home that whole have courage and be kind thing. They said it like, I think, a few too many times.
They did, because I think that was this film's version of magic. Like the old cartoon that they kept where she kept talking about her magic when she got the dress and stuff. So they're trying to say, oh, if you're kind and stuff, it's almost like magic. So they're going with a different metaphor than the traditional magic.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they did mention it a lot.
Although I will say, two things made me go, with that, and that is, you mentioned that she's a very strong character, which she is in this movie. Except there's one thing that kind of contradicts that strength and the fact that throughout this whole thing she's a victim, but she never gives in and she never acts like a victim. Except for when she's asked her name, which it made me go, "What the fuck are you doing, movie?" Because when Kit asks her who she is, he goes, "What's your name?" She turns around and says Cinderella. I'm like, but the character you've created in this movie would never call herself Cinderella. She would always only ever call herself Ella. The fact that you had her call herself Cinderella kind of undermines the strength that you've given this character.
I think it's more the opposite of that. Or at least to me, I think it was the opposite of that. I think it's a case of when they asked her name and she chose to take the name Cinderella, I think that's because she's embraced that name and she's just made it her own at that point. Because at first she was sad with the name Cinderella and stuff, but as time went on, she's just embraced it. She's accepted it. They sort of started to knock her down with that name over and over again, but then she took that name and she's made it her own, which that's a strong thing to do.
I suppose, but I don't know. I viewed it as it's, to me, and maybe it's in how one views it. But to me, I viewed it much like Kunta Kinte and Roots, where the slave master always tried to give him the name Toby, and he refused. He was like, "I'm Kunta Kinte," and he held on to that. To me, by turning around and saying my name is Cinderella would be like Kunta Kinte turning around and saying my name is Toby. It felt wrong to me, and it felt like she had finally given in, that they had broken her at that point.
But she never went and said, "No, I'm Ella." Everybody else kept calling her Ella because that was her name. She accepted Cinderella for two reasons. Number one, because she wasn't going to let her stepmother and stepsisters use that as an insult. By accepting it and turning it around, it could no longer be used as an insult against her. Number two, before her father passed away, when he left to go on his journey that he never came back from, she promised him that she would obey her stepmother and she would be loyal. And if that's the name they choose to abide by to call her, then by her own, at least as she interprets her instructions to her father, it's her responsibility to, embrace and listen to and do whatever her stepmother says, which is why she doesn't leave for the longest time, because she has to care for the house and the animals and everything per, what her father always taught her. And I think she started the name because she felt it was part of her responsibility as the daughter of this woman, whether horrible or otherwise. She is this woman's daughter, and she agreed to her father, whom she loved, to, obey this woman. So
I would say yes, except the movie directly contradicts what you just said.
How so?
Because yes, she promised that, which is why she stayed in that house, which is why she put up with the abuse and the name and all that stuff. But before she tells Kit her name, before she leaves the room, the stepmother says, "I forbid you from going down there, you can't go down there." And she turns around and says, "No, I'm going down there, fuck the hell off," basically.
Yeah, that's because
she defies the stepmother. So at that point, she no longer was obeying the stepmother, in which case there would have been no point for her to keep the Cinderella name. Her name is Ella.
But she didn't say, "No, fuck off." She said, "No, you're not my mother." So it wasn't her disobeying her. It was just she was still doing what her father asked. It's just she's realised at this point that woman's not her mother. And when she asked her name, she went with Cinderella. Probably, you could even argue maybe A, embracing her name, or B, because based on how much time passed in the film, she's been called that for so long, that might be the only name she really knows to call herself.
And the fact that when she first meets quote unquote Kit, it's maybe her naivety didn't pick up on it, but it's pretty obvious that he's using a fake name too.
Yeah,
That's it.
there's
No, that's his
that.
actual name. He said
There's
it's his
that.
actual name.
Yeah, there's that. But there's also the fact of if you want to talk about characters and stuff, it's sort of like I'd put it to you. Do you think the Joker is a weak character if he calls himself Joker or Penguin?
Or Riddler.
Well, I would say Joker, no, because isn't that a name he gave himself?
No, once in a lot of continuities anyway, when he had that clown face, people started to mock him and call him Joker and clown and stuff. And he snaps and he takes that name and he's definitely made it his own.
Fair enough.
And I say Penguin because, like I said, in some continuities,
Yeah, I know Penguin. Yeah.
he's used that. But I know I was explaining that to Jim
Yeah.
because Jim said
Yeah.
Riddler. Riddler normally comes up with his own name, to be fair, because he likes giving riddles.
True, and in the case of Penguin, it depends. Because, like, I know in Batman Returns, he originally didn't like that name because people called him that, but then at the end, he goes, "No, I am not a man. I am an animal."
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, so it makes sense that she'd call herself Cinderella. Plus, I'd also make the case of you have to bend the logic a little bit on that bit just to say, well, why would she call herself that? And then think, well, she's probably either embracing the name or doing that because the film you're seeing is called Cinderella. People kind of want to hear her call herself Cinderella. Because even in the original cartoon, later on when she was married, she was Princess Cinderella. Like, she takes that name.
True. Which is fair enough. I don't know. It just seemed weird to me in a lot of places that she would call herself that. But maybe that's just me.
It might be. Like I said, my only complaint, which since we're near the end, I'll say, was the ending.
Mm-hmm.
The ending was fine. I had no problem with most of the ending, except for the part, and I understand what they were going for, but the part where she turns around and says to her stepmother, "I forgive you," and that's it. I wanted to see, like in other versions of Cinderella, like the books and other sort of adaptations of Cinderella, I wanted to see the stepmother get some sort of comeuppance. Like, I wanted to see her get arrested for how she's treated Cinderella or something, because technically she's kept as a slave, so have her arrested or something. Like, I believe in, I think it was Ever After, the Drew Barrymore one. That is a great film, by the way. But yeah, I believe it was in that one when they ask what's going to happen, and basically Cinderella turns around and banishes them from the kingdom. Other adaptations, she's taken them and made them the royal servants of the house, so she's got them back a full circle. Other ones, she's killed them, which I don't want them to do in this. But it's a case of, I just wanted to see them get arrested or some sort of comeuppance, because I understand character-wise Cinderella's strong, and she's saying, I forgive you, I understand the motivation, but as an audience, I kind of want to see comeuppance. I just wanted to see something. I wanted to see something happen to the mother.
Well, she did get effectively banished because they did say she basically ended up with that Archduke, but they both got banished from the kingdom.
Yeah, they did, but I wanted to see more of it, like them them getting taken away, or them being banished, or them. I wanted to see the comeuppance, if that makes sense. That was just, like I said, that's just a small flaw for me personally with the film, and that's like the only one I have is that one flaw of I just want to see a little bit of comeuppance.
Yep. My only complaint with the ending was the fact that she completely ditched her house. I'm like, after you hammered into our skulls the entire movie of her father always telling her, treasure this house. This house is precious. It was, your mother's house, and your mother loved this house. Always loved this house. Hammering in that she would never leave this house. That's the other reason she always stayed, is because she promised her father she would always treasure the house. But then once she marries the king, it's like, nope, fuck it, I have a palace, fuck the house. I'm like, wait, what?
I think it's implied she would have kept it, because like you said, the mother was banished, which I know we didn't see the comeuppance, but with the house, if the mother's banished, and all the other stuff, who owns the house? It's her.
Yeah, it's Cinderella's house. It's logical she'd have somebody live there to take care of the house.
Yeah, it's logical like she'd keep it. She'd keep it for like when she goes there to like mourn her mother or think about it, but she'd be living at the palace, because it's a palace.
Yeah, but like you said, maybe this would have been part of the comeuppance. It would have been nice at least, as she walked out when they were doing that narration of what happened to the people, that they just said, Cinderella promptly like banished her stepmother and stepsisters from the house, kind of thing. from ever stepping foot in the house again. But they never did that. The implication was that the stepmother and the stepsisters were free to live in that house until they were thusly banished from the kingdom. Which I'm like, that doesn't sit right with me. Because it seems like after she basically was like, well, I'm going to get married to the king now, it almost seemed like she didn't care about the house. It's like, no, I don't care. You evil wenches can stay here for all I care.
I think that was more of a case of how many years has she put up with this crap? For once, she's doing something, and her mother always told her, if you be kind and stuff, you will get rewarded. She's finally getting something that's for her. She's finally getting her happy ending. So she's just taking her happy ending.
Yeah, and she has to go marry the king before she can do anything in regards to the house. So it makes sense that
No, she doesn't. It's her house. Married to the king or not, it's her house.
No, it's the stepmother's house.
No, it's a stepmother's house by legal inheritance laws at the time.
Fair enough.
Which is why the stepmother would have inherited the house. That's why when I asked her, Cinderella, you're of age, you don't have to stay there anymore, because she can't throw her hair there because her stepmother, by the marriage law, owns the house. But she could have left at any time, but she didn't, because her mother and father wanted her to take care of the house and the animals. And so basically, it's a situation where she's going to go off, she's going to marry the king, have her happy ending. But then now that the king had, as soon as, fairly quickly after they got back, the king would discover that, the stepmother was plotting with my Grand Duke. All right, well, you can all get out of my kingdom, but don't cut back. So, they were more concerned about, the wedding happening and everything. And then after that, they would have dealt with banishing everybody in that whole situation. Personally, I didn't mind the ending. I thought it played out well. I thought they, smoothed everything out, and it was nice. I will say one thing I particularly liked about the ending. I liked how they didn't have anybody in it. First of all, I will say, I don't know. I think I have here about the actor's name up, but the actor, where is it? Where's the cast list? I'm jumping around. Okay, here we go. I will say Nonso Anozi, the actor who played the captain of the guard. He was my favorite character in the movie.
Yeah, he was awesome.
I like that dude. And I liked how when they got near the end and they didn't find anybody, or then there was the singing, and the Grand Duke was like, no, we're leaving. I'm giving the orders. And Turtle was like, I don't know about that. What do you think? And then he just pulls out the king just sitting there like, no, Captain, why don't you go find out what that's about? And Grand Duke's like, wait.
Yeah, I love the fact that that fucking Kit from the get-go doesn't trust the Archduke. I'm like, that's fucking awesome. He's like, no, I think I'm gonna go with you and not tell you. I'm like, damn, dude, that's some Batman shit right there.
Well, the Grand Duke outright pretty much showed he didn't care, but tried to convince him to marry the admittedly very hot princess from the neighboring kingdom.
Yeah, and I could say those characters were pretty cool. I will admit, my two favourite characters in the film, ironically, were probably Cinderella and her stepmother. And
those two actors just did a good job.
I like those two, and I thought they had good chemistry with each other, and also I felt they were the characters, and I'm like, that's cool, but I didn't hate any characters in this, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I didn't find out after the fact. Apparently the king is apparently on Game of Thrones, so more power to him.
Well, he was at the time you read that. They tend to kill him off fast.
This is true. I don't know. I don't know at this point.
Yeah,
I don't know this. Yeah, but I don't know this way. But yeah, I will say, overall, the movie, I liked a lot of what they did. The one thing admittedly, I know you guys talked about liking it earlier. The one thing that I felt was a little out of place was Helena Bonham Carter as the fairy godmother. I don't know if it's just because of my preconceived notions of the actress, or whether it's the way they portray the character. She seemed a little bit more bumbling and physical comedy-ish than she had in the cartoon. And just for some reason, that particular character, all the others seem to fit into this version of the world. That particular character did not seem to fit into this version of the world to me. Not that Helena Bonham Carter did a bad job. For the version of the character she was going for, it was funny. Oh, we got the comedy. Oh, we enlarged a pumpkin, but we're trapped in the greenhouse. That was hysterical. The turning all the animals into people. And they're like, I'm not a coachman, I'm a gecko. That was hysterical. And just for some reason, that character felt like she didn't fit in the movie. Maybe that's just me.
See, I thought she fit in the movie the same way the original fairy godmother fit in the film, only because what they were going for with this film, with the magic style stuff, is kindness is its reward. And the fact she was dressed as this old woman when Cinderella's at her lowest point, and Cinderella still gives her stuff.
Yeah, that part was awesome. It was after she became the godmother that it was a little.
And then she's like, I'm your hairy godfather. I mean, fairy godmother. awesome. And then she transforms, and then she rewards her for it, and all the comedy and stuff. I'm like, okay, it lightens up how like you could say depressing. No, not darkness. It's not darkness. It's just emotion. There's a difference, but more like the depressingness of what Cinderella was going through. So it gets the audience uplifted, ready for the big ball. And I'm like, the comedy felt. I liked it. Like there was little bits where they added stuff that you could argue might be out of place, but I felt it worked for the film. Like one of my favorite scenes is just her feeding the mice on the little where she turns the cup upside down, puts her sheet, and goes a table, and the little mouse eats it. Like that, I don't know why. It's funny. I like it.
Yeah. I will say one thing I really loved about the mice specifically, but the animals in general, is how they portrayed the mice and the animals, because they obviously took the massive inspirations from the cartoon, but they also knew these are going to be real mice. We're going to portray them as real mice, but we're going to portray them basically the cartoon mice as they would be if they were real mice. And it was a very subtle portrayal of the mice, which I liked. They didn't go over the top with it. There was comedy there. It was funny because you have these mice kind of, sort of, a little bit acting like people, but not cartoon, if that makes sense. And I thought it worked very well. I was like, I don't know. I love the animals. They were also among my favorite characters just because of how they were portrayed.
Yeah, the animals were portrayed well too. I like
my favorite scene with the mice had to be Gus at the end when he's sitting there munching on cheese and all the mice are, piling on trying to pull down the latch, and they just kind of look at him. They're like, "Come on, dude, we need your fat ass up here." He just looks down at the cheese and goes, tosses the cheese and goes and helps them. I'm like, that's fucking awesome.
Yep.
Speaking of that scene, by the way, I did like the fact that she was singing Lavender Blue, another song that admittedly has been out for a long time, but the version that at least I know, and I think a lot of people know, is the Disney version sung by Burl Ives, so that was kind of a cool touch as well.
Is that what she was singing? Nice.
Lavender Blue Dilly Dilly, yeah, it's an old English folk song, but that famous version was sung by Burl Ives in some movie that came out right around the time that the actual Cinderella movie came out.
And cool.
Yeah. Yep. So, final thoughts.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, either Jim or Mole, with final thoughts.
I was letting Jim go.
Okay. I guess that overall, I really enjoyed the film. I thought it was a great interpretation. It's been a long time since I've seen the cartoon, so I'm not going to totally attest to accuracy, to compare to cartoon. But this standing on its own, I like this version of the film. I liked how they developed some of the characters more, gave more into the backstory. The bright colors, the costumes, the sets, everything. It was a beautiful looking film from start to finish. Like I said, I personally, I liked that the actresses and actors they got to perform all the different roles. Like I said, I did feel that Helena Bonham Carter was a little out of place as the fairy godmother, but it worked for what they were doing. And overall, I just really enjoyed the film, and I felt that they did a great job telling the story in a way that is both familiar and new at the same time, which I think was the hope that they were going for. So overall, if I'm going to rate this movie, I would give it like a 9, because I think it's a great movie. I like it.
Nice. And I'll say for my final thought, I'll say I liked all the film. The only complaint I had was that one little thing about I wanted to see some comeuppance. But yeah, I know the word. But yeah, I was saying I just wanted to see a little bit of comeuppance. But basically, that's like one little nitpick. Besides that, the rest of the film was really well done. For what it was really just beautiful. It was directed well. It was written well. It was lit, like Jim mentioned with the lighting and stuff. It was lit well. Everything about this film was really well done. And yeah, even the prince, they fleshed out the prince, which I realized we hadn't discussed, by basically giving him the same motivation as a Disney princess, which that works for equality, of he's not really happy just settling for any old arranged marriage. He wants to find true love. And I'm like, that kind of works. Flashes him out, makes him cool. I was rooting for the prince. I didn't hate him.
Yeah.
And yeah, the film was really good. So I'd give this a solid buy. It's probably maybe the best film that's been released this year. Or last year. I think it was this year it came out. So it's been definitely the best film. It was released this year, I believe.
Yeah, it came out this year. And I really like this movie, despite the few things that took me out of it. like I said, the fairy godmother and the stepsisters, like I said, portrayed very, very well, mind you. But I thought they were maybe a little too cartoony, a little too cartoon villainy. But maybe that's what they were going for, and that's fair enough. And I could see that given who was directing it, which we had mentioned, directed by Kenneth Branagh. Fucking awesome. He's a great director, great actor too. But he brought that whimsical flair to it, which it needed. You needed to have that whimsy, and this movie had whimsy in all the right places. He was subtle in all the right places too, which shocked me how subtle this movie was. I was like, wow. Like I think you said, it was written well, it was directed well, acted well, lit well. Just everything about this movie is top notch. I mean, it was musical in all the right places, didn't hit you over the head with too many things, and it's a really well done Cinderella adaptation, and it does have that Disney flair to it too. So it's very much a Disney movie, but at the same time, it's kind of like an adult Disney movie, which is nice. Not adult by like swearing or blood or anything like that. It's adult as in it felt more grown up, and that's a good thing. And I like the fact that you could see movies like this put out by Disney, and it feels like Disney is maturing, and it's not saying, kids can't see this kind of stuff, because they can. It's not, there's no blood, there's no sex, there's no, but the themes were very mature. The tone of it was a very mature tone, but it told the story, and it told it well, and it told it in a way that it needed to be told, and it's in a way that I think was more in line with how the original story was told, in terms of the tone of the movie. But obviously, they had all the stuff from the Disney movie in there, the original Disney movies, a lot of the comedy and stuff, which was, it's a balance, and it balanced it out very, very well, between the darker tones and then the lighter tones, and it's a really, really well put together movie. I highly recommend this. I will put it on a fervent buy. I don't know if I myself will be buying the movie. It's a good movie, but I don't know, maybe I'll buy it. It's worth it. I would probably recommend it to Richter if he hasn't seen it. I'd recommend him buying it, share it with the kids and stuff. It'd be a great movie to watch with the family.
Wait, you're rating it a buy and then not buying it?
Well, if I have to choose between a buy or a don't buy, I'm not going to tell people not to buy the movie. It's good enough. You should buy it.
Yeah, the option of choosing a rental if you're gonna completely rip off Mall's rating system, which he's told you not to do in the past before anyway.
But buy, rent, avoid. That's why I don't go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's worth more than rent. Like I said, I'll probably buy it. It is a really good movie, really well cast. So, yeah, really well done, Disney. And yeah, you might be right, Mo. It might be the best movie we've had this year. You might be right about that. But Mr. Phoenix, will you actually be around tomorrow for Star Trek?
I hope so.
All right. Well, hopefully we will have the review of Star Trek 2009, directed by J.J. Abrams, for you tomorrow here on the Shadows Maw. If not, we will have it before this month is out, because that is the Year of Trek review for this month. Till then, I've been your host, Marcus Shadow. Thank you to James Phoenix for dialing in from vacation.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chriz the Mole, for joining me.
A pleasure.
And stay tuned for our weekly wrestling show, X Marks, with Richter Hammer, your host, Chriz the Mole. Thank you. Good night.